We go. Welcome to a new episode. This is the fourth episode of these monthly tutorials, and this month we're gonna view a new piece which I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. It's been a weird piece because the subject is kind of wacky and a little out there. It's a little more complicated than my previous piece, but it also encompasses more concepts, more principles that I really want to introduce to you. So during this session, we're going to talk about the silver ratio, which is it's something that we're not so familiar, at least by name, in the West. Although we do use it every day, and I'll show you how. But it's also used very much in the East, in Eastern tradition. In fact, people from China, Japan, Korea, they respond sort of culturally much more to the silver ratio than they do to the golden ratio, and we're going to see why. And we'll also see, I will describe to you two more steps to add to your process when you're creating a piece. These steps, I didn't really talk about it before, but I've through my conversations with you, Vojta, and other artists through the years, I've realized that these two steps are sort of essential, and they are namely the concepting stage and the narrative stage, which is devising a story behind your piece, and not just diving right into the sketch and try to figure it out on the fly, but having these sort of two steps before that will help you stay motivated through the creation of your piece, and we'll see that too. And that sort of introduce the third concept I wanted to talk about, which is motivation, how to stay motivated, how to navigate the ups and downs, of creating a piece, which does happen. It tends to happen a little less when you work as for a client, because you have a brief, you have notes, you have feedback, so you are sort of supported. You have a structure around you to sort of carry you a little bit, or at least help you through the process. And you can see, something I love is to see how the Riot Game artists, the guys who do the big splash arts, they thank, on ArtStation you can see thank you for, to this guy, that guy, the art director for their help, because it's always, when you work for a client, it's always more of a team effort. There's other people doing the concept art, there's other people, directing you, helping you out, giving you valuable feedback. But when you're just by yourself, when you're trying to, to make a concept art just for you, you might want to you as free as you are to do your own thing. It's also daunting, and the road ahead is full of obstacles, right? Because you're on your own, and that's something I really want to address in this new session and during these months, the upcoming live streams. So let's get started with the silver ratio. Here it is. The silver ratio, that's a ratio that's used in mostly in Asia, as opposed to the golden ratio, which we saw in the very first session, which I invite you to view again if you need to, or if you're new and you haven't seen it yet. The golden ratio is what we are used to in the West, and that's it sort of mimics natural growth, organic growth, in nature. The silver ratio has a different property, and that property is that it's a self-harmonizing ratio. And what I mean by that, let me show you. This page here, this canvas right here, is the A4 canvas, right? We're all familiar with international, paper format, right? There's A4, A5, all the way to from A6 to A0, I think. And basically, I'm sure you already know, from A0 to A6, the only thing that differs is the size of the page, but the proportions of the page, the ratio of the page is actually the same, right? And that's the property of the of the silver ratio that I want to share with you, is that if you divide this page into two, you end up with two sections of equal size that also are equal to the overall, the original, the bigger page, right? It's like a fractal, right? If you're familiar with fractals, it's this sort of idea of however deep you go in the, down the rabbit hole of, sizing down and down and down. No matter how deep you go into this sizing down, you just keep the same ratio, the same proportions, and that's something that sort of that's why this format is self-harmonizing. That doesn't work with the golden rectangle, for example. This is a golden rectangle, so meaning the proportions are 1 to 1.618, and so if we cut it in two, as you can see, there's no, we end up with two rectangles that are not the same shape as our original rectangle, right? So that's the one sort of magical property of the silver ratio. So let me show you another property which is very interesting, and that has an application to how we use it, in everyday composition, in photography especially. Okay. So here, what this is, I called it a silver spiral, but it's not really a spiral, right? It's just, what it is just a series of sections of halves, right? I just cut into two each, successive division, right? And you end up sort of spiraling, right? And it spirals into this sort of, well, of course it's an infinite point because you can always go, deeper and deeper. Closer and closer, smaller and smaller. But what it points to is this line here, like this point here, which is exactly the third. Like this is 1/3 of the width of the paper. And this is also 1/3 of the height of the paper. So for some reason, I don't know, I'm not a pro in math at all. I'm just curious enough to have noticed it. A spiral, like a silver spiral, sort of ends up pointing towards the third of your canvas. So for example, if we just mirror these spirals, right and up and down, we end up with the thirds, dividing our canvas into thirds. And the thirds is used in photography composition. It's sort of an easy rule to follow because a lot of camera displays sort of have these built-in third divisions, right? So that's something. I mean, what I mean by that is that whenever you use the rule of thirds, sort of keep in mind that it kind of goes back to to the silver ratio and to a harmonious subdivision of your page. And so another thing about the silver ratio is that it's a much more restful, a much more peaceful and reassuring transition than the golden ratio. The golden ratio, it does something like this. Let me do it right here. I would have to transform it and make the length 1.618. Right, I'm kind of okay. So as you can see, the transition from one unit to the next is much more dramatic in the golden ratio than it is in the silver ratio. And so when you use it in your compositions, like when you're trying to devise space between your objects, your elements, whatever it is, it will have an effect of a more appeasing effect than the golden ratio. The silver ratio has a sort of is more even than the golden ratio. And the way it's been used in Eastern art and architecture is very interesting. Because of these self-harmonizing properties, it's been used to design temples, pagodas. Every pretty much every traditional architecture in Asia, I mean by Asia I mean Eastern Asia, China, Korea, Japan, has this sort of implements this ratio here. So that's why from a long time ago, Asian people who live in Asia, who are born and raised in Asia, have a sort of a cultural, almost natural sensitivity to this ratio there, and that's something that's super important if you're gonna design something for an Asian market, for a Japanese market, for example, or the Chinese market. You're gonna have to somehow implement that ratio to sort of create a nice reference for your audience, for your viewers. And that's something that a lot of Westerners just we just don't know, right? We have to be somehow introduced to that, and I was introduced to that when I arrived in Japan. In fact, in Japan it's called the Japanese ratio, like Yamato-hi, which is a bit well, it's not really Japanese, but this ratio is used so much in Japan that they just called it a Japanese ratio, just because it's everywhere. It's everywhere that you look, and by that I mean not only temples, pagodas, ancient architecture, but also in more modern architecture. This is the Tokyo Skytree, right? And so, well, I won't go through the whole thing, but I can just tell you that from the floor plan to the top of the structure, if you stretch a silver ratio, you'll see like that the median line, the line where the ratio actually happens, is where you have an interesting change in floors. And if you from that ratio, if you develop, if you stretch from that median here, if you stretch a new silver ratio all the way to the top again, that median will happen right there, like at the top of this, this floor here, this third floor, I guess. And same, if you do that. So it's kind of everywhere, like within this structure. It's also in the cut section of the structure. It's happening right there. By the way, something, sorry, I forgot to mention, but the silver ratio happens naturally, so to speak, in geometry, in the octagon. It's the ratio, how to say, the relationship between the length, one length, and the diagonal in an octagon is 1 to 1 plus the silver ratio. It's not quite, 1 to 1.414. It's 1 to 1 plus 1.414. Again, I don't want to drown you in math. That's the extent of what I know when where I'm gonna go with that. But just to let you know, that's the geometrical origin of that ratio, how it manifests itself. And the octagon, if you're familiar with anything Asian, is pretty much at the base of a lot of traditions and a lot of ways Asians have like ancient Asian cultures have measured and sort of try to understand the universe, because the silver ratio sort of it's a fractal, right? It just propagates itself from one dimension to the next, right? From the A4 to the A5 to the A6, or growing from the A4 to the A3 ratio to the A2, etc. It's the same shape, but just how to say, growing or decreasing, but it conserves its harmony always. And that's something that's been an attractive property to ancient cultures that wanted to sort of arrange their architecture in a way that sort of resonates with eternal or immortal properties. So you'll find the octagon and the silver ratio embedded within it. You'll find these symbols throughout like Asian manifestations of culture, and that it goes for Taoist culture, like for Taoist tradition, to Buddhist tradition also encompasses it. By the way, this temple here, sorry, that's a Buddhist temple, but it also encompasses that sort of that thing that we see in the Taoist this Taoist diagram here. So, Asia sort of reused and recycled that symbol and that those properties throughout its history and tradition, all the way to modern days, like this tower here, the Tokyo Sky Tree, and even to famous characters. Sometimes it seems like reading too much into something, like, okay, did they actually design everything like that? But when you think, like, I guarantee you it's absolutely true. Like, it's so there's something so crucial about designing a character. Like, so much research and energy and resources go into designing an actual, like, a character that is guaranteed, so to speak, to please a certain target audience. So much go into it that you can bet on it. Like, it's no coincidence, is what I mean, that proportions sort of follow this ratio. Now, because today's culture is sort of exports itself, right? Like, Doraemon is famous around the world, not just in Japan. Same for the Tokyo Sky Tree. It's designed not only to please Eastern people, but also to please Western people. And so that's why in these modern designs, you have also a consideration of the golden ratio, which I put here in a slightly different, in a different color. But it's also very, very clearly, it clearly applies to that structure as well. And that's meant to, to attract us, tourists. And I'll let you, I gave you this PSD just so you can, like, turn on these layers and like go through the motions yourself. Like, you can, because the ratio here, you can devise it yourself, like devise an actual like ruler yourself and just actually measure, these elevation plans of these structures. I didn't modify anything, stretch anything. This is really how it happens to coincide, with some of these measurements. Same for Doraemon. The golden ratio also applies, has been used there to sort of please our own sensitivities as Westerners. So just to sum up, this whole golden ratio, silver ratio sort of topic, and to bring it all together, when you're designing something that you want to have, you want it to have a sort of global, attractiveness, a global appeal, you really want to not just use the golden ratio, but also the silver ratio. Like, just see how you can use it, how you can implement it and try to play with it. Just, that's all, that's something I really invite you to do, because it's super interesting. And it gives your piece a sense of purpose, a sense of, there's something, purposeful behind it. And now, of course, the silver ratio is useful to appeal to Eastern sensitivities, but it's also useful in general when you want to have something that has a sort of a harmonious, a sort of a eternally harmonious, eternally like restful, reassuring, cute, peaceful property. That's something, because it sort of subdivides itself into itself and keeps its shape, through its divisions. It's a ratio that naturally inspires like peace and harmony. So that's it for the silver ratio. I'm glad I managed to keep it under 20 minutes because we have a lot to cover. So okay, now let me show you. Then what I went through. Okay, not this one. This one. Okay. This is the second topic I want to talk to you about. It relates to having a plan, right? Last month we talked about these steps here. The sketching step, color and lighting, rendering. Thumbnail I added this time, of course, but it's pretty much like these steps. You can find them. You can find plenty of resources online to, like, this is the how-to, right? This is the sort of how to paint, right? This is the technical thing. This tutorial tackles it. Other tutorials do it, of course, but there's something that I haven't really heard much about. Is like, except when I was working in Thailand in my first job, it's the concept and narration steps. I didn't go to a proper art school, at least not for long. I had this sort of internship in China for like a few months. That's where I learned, like in a studio, like a bunch of principles behind the how to paint. But this idea of concept and narration, that's in my first job that I really got acquainted to. It, and the idea is that, okay, your spirit, your motivation is likely to dip if you don't have a cohesive, a strong story behind it, a strong motivation behind, the why, like the why you're painting. Why are you painting what you're painting? How to paint it, that's just, it's almost superfluous at this early stage. It's like, how to paint is a much more mechanical, sort of a skill set that you can just learn. But the why and the what, that's something that's much more conceptual and personal, and it pertains to personal emotions and your personal mindset. And without addressing these two sort of pillars, so to speak, it's you can expose yourself to some sort of obstacles later on that can have a direct impact on your motivation, that can really sap your spirit, and that's a shame. And I want to I want to mention that because Vojta, if you're listening, I know I can see you said hi. Hi everybody, by the way. Good to have you here. Vojta, yesterday we were talking about this, right? How sometimes you just like as a student, when you're on your own, left to your own devices, it's super hard to just conquer these ups and downs, this motivational ups and downs. And so I want to show you how I went about it, because I also have these emotional ups and downs. These don't disappear, by the way. You cannot truly conquer it. You just conquer the way you react to these ups and downs. But these ups and downs naturally occur because if you're doing something that's challenging, right? You're trying to do your best piece ever. You're trying to do something for your portfolio, something for a challenge, or just to, you want to do something cool. That's something that you've never done before. That's something you want to try to, like, you're trying to elevate yourself above your previous condition, what you've been doing so far. You want to do better. So this creates a tension inside of you, like naturally, like, what if I fail, right? And we know, we've all heard self-help, motivation, don't worry about it, it's okay, it's the journey that counts. Of course, it's the journey that counts. But we all have personal demons, personal limitations that come from childhood, that come from, our own emotional state of mind right now, that can truly have an effect on that. And that, because they're emotional, because they're visceral, they will often have a more, a very sometimes violent impact on your motivation, and can really even make you want to quit. That's something that I was talking to a friend of mine, a great friend of mine, and a former colleague, in my former studio in Thailand. He's a pro, like he's been doing this for years, and he wants to quit. Like he told me recently he wanted to quit, and that's something. It's surprising, it's shocking, but it's something. It's shocking because how experienced he is, and just because right now he's not doing exactly what he wants, and he's feeling like he's plateauing. His level, everybody's level plateaus. Until you find the thing that makes you progress to the next step. There's a lot of suffering that go behind, progressing, and that accompanies your process. So what I want to share with you through these tutorials is not a sort of magic, it's not some self-help, whatever, it's nothing magic or mystical. It's a way of compartmentalizing your process so that you can, whenever you're stuck somewhere. For example, I was stuck in the thumbnail phase here, coloring the thumbnails. I tried to color, I tried to go from here to here, like directly. It's this, let me find it for you. It's here, it's this face here. I did the thumbnails and I tried to color it, and it was going nowhere because I don't know if it might be the case for you as well, but for me, I cannot for the life of me colorize black and white. I tried, it's impossible. The transition is so uncomfortable and weird and uncanny that it just doesn't happen. So I tried. You can see I had just a bunch of layers just to colorize, and and it adds just a little bit of, it's always like little changes. It's a very, when you're stuck, when you're just doing very timid steps, like, okay, I'm just gonna add a little bit of color here, always using some convoluted, blending modes and color balance, all kinds of tips and tricks from Photoshop that you hope are going to save your life, but in this case it didn't. That's when you're stuck. So I went back to my plan. I said, okay, I have a story, I have a concept that I'm okay with, I have a story, and now I'm stuck there. So what do I know how to do? Like, what can I do? So let's stop trying to colorize black and white, and let's go to, let's just do a clean sketch. Like, just go back to doing a clean sketch, which is what I did here. This is the number 2, right? What I did is that, okay, this is my sketch. I just pasted the the sort of half colorized thumbnails that I had. I blurred it and lightened it and just started sketching on top. And that's something I'm more comfortable with because I know I can use, perspective. Again, I'm referring you to the previous sessions, like the first sketching session of last month's piece. Like I don't want to just talk exactly about the same thing again. Like these principles, the technique behind perspective. Like you can just check the previous episodes. But just to recap quickly, I aligned the perspective, the vanishing points, with the main direction of my character. So my character is facing the same direction as, that vanishing point over here. Right? It branches in the same direction that I want my character to face. Same for the sideways, lines. These vanishing points, they also face, they sort of accompany the sideways position of my character. And then what I did, like patiently, I just I went through the motions of, sketching the guy and making sure, when I have a symmetry, okay, making sure that the distance between that perspective line and the tip of my object is the same, on one side and on the other, trying to gauge the roundness and make sure it ends at the right, at the same, pretty much at the same space, right? At the same place, horizontally, vertically throughout the whole thing. Another thing I try to do is make sure not every shape is the same size, right? Like that's something also we saw before. I just want to, just mention it again. Like, distance between this and this is not equal. You want to make sure nothing is even. Nothing is evenly spaced. That's a composition killer. Even space between elements. That's something you really want to make sure you avoid. Like this, different sizes, right? And now this is where the silver ratio, is useful again, because the ratio of this canvas is the silver ratio. It's the height is 1 and the length is 1.414. So to sort of harmonize my character with the dimensions of the piece, I use this. Well, now I just used it as a ruler. I use the silver ratio and try to gauge proportions. For example, this little element here, this graphic element, I sort of used the silver ratio to tell me where it ends, where some tips, some things end. then you subdivide it even more, and you see where this ends here. This is, I don't want to sound overly sophisticated, but this is pretty useful. Like when you sort of use the same sort of ruler throughout your piece to harmonize your proportions, you end up like using, well, this is pretty much right what it looks like, what I did, right? You end up with proportions that sort of harmonize with each other. That sort of they matched it. It's like a chord, like playing a chord on a guitar. Like all the notes sort of correspond with each other. So it on this piece I go pretty like on purpose. I go in a very elaborate, it's kind of stiff almost manner. Not everybody does that, even like great pros and everything. But I just did it on purpose throughout the whole piece, just to show you the fun you can have with it, how it can help, and how it can actually to use it. Now, okay. Well, what I want to talk about also is going back to this plan here. Is actually these steps here: concept and narration. I was saying just earlier that I sort of was acquainted with these principles when I was working, and it's something that my former boss used to work at FZD, like Feng Zhu's design school. He used to be a teacher there. Years ago. We're talking 7 years ago. His name is Scan 321. I'll share with you his portfolio, everything. Like you can even see, like I'll share with you the link to the studio I used to work at. And this guy, he told me that Feng Zhu made a pretty big deal about writing down your ideas, writing everything down. Like start from a text. Because if you can word it, it's easier to describe to to yourself, to other people. It's easier to visualize, and it gives you a concrete bullet point to explore ideas from. And that's something I didn't think about before. Like as an amateur artist, you just start something because it sort of looks cool. So you have this sort of vague, like when you are a let me just help you visualize that. When you're a beginner artist, like this is just sort of you kind of you kind of know you're supposed to have a story. Of course you try. You always start from something cool you saw once, like on ArtStation, like, oh, that piece looks great, or oh yeah, I kind of like pirates, I want to do something about pirates, right? And then it's like, okay, let's just do a shape or something. And because the original idea is a little bit flimsy, or is not worded properly or thoroughly, at some point you hit an obstacle. It's like, why am I even doing this? Like, why this is, do I really like it? It sucks, so I actually don't like it. Like you can end up being pretty frustrated with yourself and having this very negative feedback loop of you're not going anywhere, so why try anyway, right? So to counteract this tendency, I really want to encourage you to first go through conceptual, like jot down conceptual ideas, which is what I did here. Okay. Like the original, I want to show you the, sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place. I just want to make sure I stay on time because I don't want to, drag on forever. But okay, the concept behind this piece that I did is the constellation of Orion. Orion is an interesting constellation because it's been present in history and mythology, like everywhere, in China, in the Americas, in Polynesia, in European folklore, Middle East, everywhere. It meant something to people all around the world for as long as they've been there. But they've meant different things, right? Like for the Babylonians, it was described as the heavenly shepherd, and for the Chinese, it was like the mansion of the three stars. Like the Chinese constellations are divided into mansions, into houses or lodges. And so, browsing through this, just one, like the morning when I thought, okay, I should start thinking about my next piece, like what I want to do. I was like, okay, let's just start with something I like, like mythology. And oh yeah, Orion. I heard about Orion one time. I just Google it, and you see through things and you read through, and there's some pretty interesting concepts that appear, like this god, the Babylonian constellation is sacred to Papshukal and Ninshubur, whatever, both minor gods fulfilling the roles of messengers of the god. Papshukal is closely associated with the figures of a walking bird. Okay, a rooster. That's crazy. That's a crazy idea. And it came out of nowhere. Like, it came out of a faint sort of idea I had. Like, oh yeah, Orion. And suddenly you have a sort of a seed, like a spark for a story. Okay, this god, like Papshukal, right? This sort of Sumerian god. What is he up to? He's a messenger of gods. He's like this sort of menial god. Like, he just, transfers messages. Like, and he's a walking bird. Like, how weird is that? So I thought, okay, that would be cool to have a sort of a character with long spindly legs. Let me see, because I actually have the design here, which I shared also with you in the okay, here it's gonna appear at some point. Okay, here it is. Lighten it up. That's the sort of sketch I came up with, like some weird god, which with long okay, it's a dirty sounding name in Czech. All right. Good to know. So I like this idea of gods having weird attributes, like if you're familiar with Spirited Away, the Miyazaki movie, gods have these weird like physical attributes. They look weird. They look intimidating and unfamiliar to us. So I kind of like the idea of a god with like weird, beast-like sort of elements to it. Then what I did also, I have a face reference somewhere. Okay. I also like the idea of a sort of baby-faced sort of entity to contrast with these beastly attributes. Like, think again about like contrast and juxtaposition, to make a concept more interesting. What can you do? You can take 180 degrees, turns from one element to the next in terms of idea. So it's got this big gangly walking bird legs, but it's got this weird baby face, right? So this is Cisco, R&B, star from the 90s. This is a French singer from the 70s. And this is a young Christina Ricci from Casper, from the movie Casper. And what they have in common is that they have like big expressing eyes, and they have this sort of baby face, sort of, proportions. And so that's something I tried to, to implement in this guy here. Where did I put the design? Where is it? Okay, sorry, here it is. So I just sort of like this idea, and this is all during the plan, like in this early concept part. Like, this is something you just make bullet points. You can sort of you make ideas branch from one to the next. Like, okay, Orion. Okay, there's a god, like an ancient god. He's a messenger. Okay, he's on the other side, Orion, also revered in ancient China. Ancient China has bronze script. This is another super interesting thing that I like. Is like ancient Chinese scriptures. Like, they look very weird and otherworldly, like very esoteric. Let me show you here. Chinese bronze script. That's one of the characters in the Orion constellation. And that's how it looked here, like during the Bronze Age. Like a Bronze Age script looked like this. It's very curvy and a little bit, otherworldly, almost cuneiform in some ways. It does look a little bit, like Middle Eastern, like ancient Mesopotamian scripture, like this cuneiform scriptures. So I thought it was a pretty cool, it's a gratuitous association. It doesn't need to be, but why not? You can just let it make that connection if you want. And from bronze script, I went into bronze artifacts, which in ancient China are like divine offerings. Like here it is. In ancient China, they used to, they used to do these impractical objects that are not meant to be used by mortals, and just like bury them with either their deceased, their relatives, or just as a sort of like divine offering to just like, put it in the ground for like the gods to use. And that's something I really liked. I thought, okay, that would be cool if like priests on Earth casted these bronze things, these bronze objects, and our god here, he's using these as like these big tractor beams, like these big cannons, to sort of like connect stars together and draw them together, like according to, like until they match the charts given to him by whomever, like either he draws them himself, or like it's the divine, the court, like the heavenly court, that sort of give him this assignment, like that may be just his job, like to go back to this idea of a menial job, like it's just a messenger, it's just like an intermediary god, and he's sent in the middle of nowhere, like he's assigned to this constellation of Orion to just like, make stars align and match a specific thing, so the concept doesn't go any further than this, it doesn't really need to. I'm even explaining that to you just to let you know that what went behind, my my motives behind this piece. But the real point here is that these connections, these sort of mind maps, it's like this concept of mapping out your ideas and connecting them with with arrows, everything, instead of just doing like lists and bullet points, like to actually connect these ideas with each other in a graphic way. This is super important, super useful in the early stage, because these ideas are just seeds. They're just here to, they're seeds that you can go back to later when when the feeling is a little stale. We're like, okay, I'm rendering right now, or I'm coloring. What can I add? What's missing? What can I going back to these early, bullet points of the concept. Now, what's the next step is narration. And narration is a little different from the concept, because the concept is these ideas, it's connecting ideas that are not originally connected. Like it's searching, digging for ideas on the internet through your own personal, like brainstorming yourself, what you like, what you want to, what you want to show the world, whatever. That's one thing. But then narration is actually describing the action of what's going on exactly in the piece. Like, okay, there's this god Papshukal, right? Whatever. He's standing in a field. He's reading the chart. He has giant machines behind him, and they're angled like this and like that. The narration can be in the form of a text, which I personally like. It's an extra step where you can sort of let your imagination fly a little bit before the thumbnail, because thumbnail, you're sort of limited to your own, technical abilities, whatever they may be, right? And I'm just as limited as anybody else. Sorry, Mofe, you said there is an ancient Chinese bronze artifact museum in my hometown. I always like those patterns on the artifact. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, same here. Like I was studying in Sichuan with Voita, by the way, which is here. We were both in Sichuan 10 years ago. I stayed there. I stayed in Sichuan for 2 years, and there's also a big museum of that culture, the Sanxingdui Bronze Age culture, which is very weird and exotic, even in China. Even to Chinese people, it's this semi, futuristic. Sorry, not that, bronze ref, where is it? Yeah, all these, this is super exotic even for Chinese people, and it's got this weird, it does look a little bit futuristic in some ways, like it's got this this Moebius or this alien kind of technology feeling to it, for sure. So, okay, let's go back to the plan. Okay, so you got your narration, like note it down, do your thumbnails, whatever you have to do, but like elaborate a proper story. There's my character standing in the field. It's like maybe a virgin planet, so it's just like vegetation. There's no animals. There's not even complicated, complex vegetation. It's just tall grass. And he's there standing in the night, looking at the chart and looking at the sky and trying to orient, to aim these beams at the proper stars to make them match together. And so that's the story behind it. And that's something I really want to encourage you to try. Now, let me see the next step, because I want to show you exactly also, like now, the more technical, like what actually went through. Okay, the thumbnailing. It's not this one. Sorry, I have so many documents open. Okay. So what I did in this one, let me show you. I started, let me show you exactly the first one. Yeah, maybe this. So this is something, you can try in your next piece. That's something, it's a technique I'd like to just share with you, is to start with like, sort of like silhouettes, You start black and white with a sort of dark gray, and you just, let me remove some superfluous. Okay. What else is there I need to remove? Okay. Without perspective, without anything, this is just thumbnailing, and you just try to work out a silhouette. And I got my design on the side, right? Like, yes, here it is. So I'm like, okay, I took the time to produce a sort of design. So let me see how I can arrange it in my composition. So I keep it loose, like you don't even need to have like your compositional tools yet, like this silver spiral, golden spiral, whatever. You just try to, and what would be a cool pose for this guy? And I sort of imagine him, yeah. So like I said, like going through trying to stick to my narrative, to my sort of story, that second step. So he's standing in a field, holding this chart. So he would sort of stand like this, And I don't want to lie to you, like this takes a long time. Like this takes however time you need, and the more new this is to you, the more time it's gonna take. But I don't want to sound too experienced, because I'm not actually that experienced. I'm a functional artist. I can work. I have clients, and I can thankfully make a living from it. But I'm not actually super familiar, super fluent, and with everything. And it takes me, like, this is laborious. Like this takes a while, And you see, like I just do little adjustments from one step to the next, from one to the previous, as you can see, just trying to make everything, like it's sort of from like big, rough, vague shapes into, more refined shapes, and then twisting, tweaking, think during these steps, think about the body language, right? Like, you see I sort of tilted the head, and I sort of added these sort of gestures, this sort of dynamic gestural curves to help out. You see, and I kept them there, and I just went on through the motions of that thumbnail. You see, just adjusting, keep going, And one thing that's sort of discouraging, that sort of a trouble starts pointing ahead, is like, okay, am I becoming too? Is it too detailed? Is it becoming too detailed? Like, am I going to be able to color that stuff, right? And that's where the pressure mounts, and you go deeper and deeper into detail. There's some pretty interesting, not that this particularly is interesting, but I mean, the more refined you are, the more you refine your process, and the more you're like, you actually find some pretty cool graphic solutions here and there. But it's like, okay, how am I gonna actually be able to colorize and render that? So this is where the emotional dip happened to me. I tried to I was pretty much done with the design. At least I knew, like, you see, I'd worked out a lot of the sort of you know, the way the light bounces around. You know, I worked out pretty much all of it. Like 80% of the design was there. I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to color it. So I started adding these little color. I tried to first colorize my, you know, the layer, basically, adding, you know, color balance, all kinds of stuff, and it was incredibly frustrating. It really didn't work at all. So yeah, I went back to this. I went to this to something I'm more familiar with, to this sketch thing. And we're here, like, you know, back again. Sorry, like, there was a pretty long, you know, way around, like, because there's a lot to cover, and a lot of these things are connected. They're connected with each other. But in the end, here we are, like the sketch, you know, the point of that I really want to go through during this session. So I used the blurred version of my sketch, you know, of my my thumbnails, my half-colored, frustrating thumbnails, as a sort of base, as a sort of a, you know, compositional base to sketch a more proper, you know, line art. That's my next step for me, but, you know, for you it might be different. You can just use perspective and actually just paint, you know, further along, you know, just paint your like keep grinding. Like, the grind actually works, you know. Like, there's not one process, one way of doing everything. The grind, like some artists like Ranja Vojta, we talked about him yesterday. Ranja is very good at actually grinding through very patiently from a very rough, very weird, you know, unrelatable beginner phases, like these early sketch, these early thumbnail phases, all the way through and all the way to like a very polished, beautiful, awesome like final render. But of course, if I try that, even if I succeed, that's not very useful to you, I think, right? Like, here, I'm skilled, so I just managed it, right? But that's no good for you. So I sort of instead of grinding and sort of solving this thing, you know, plowing through the difficulty of, you know, this thing, I reeled it back and brought it back to the original method I'm trying to teach, like this sort of compartmentalized method that I think is useful for you, at least as useful as it is for me, because this is a method I use professionally, like on a daily basis. So I used reference, of course. Reference is it's like it's you know, why not, you know, like, especially when you're doing stuff you're not familiar with, like mechanical designs, or, you know, pseudo mechanical, because it's not a real machine, but something that looks sort of industrial. That's something I don't really do. So I had to find, you know, proper reference. In this case, 17th, 18th century telescopes and land surveying tools. Like, these sort of things are designed to survey distances and help, you know, design maps and everything. So they have this sort of antique, complicated feeling. You know, they're not just like a laser box that just shoots a laser and gives you a distance. It's actually, you can see the mechanical interactions between the parts. So that's something, again, like when you're designing, when you're going through your conceptual ideas, your narration, like, try to think what would be visually interesting. And this was, I thought, like an okay choice, you know, something that could be cool. And also interesting point is that it's made of maybe that's not bronze, but that's at least maybe more copper, I guess. But there's a bronze-like quality to it that sort of links, you know, that sort of connects with the bronze of ancient China, the bronze of, you know, whatever I had going on with my concept already. So when you're looking for reference, for, you know, try to, you know, make them support your concept. That's something that can help you, you know, support you and consolidate your concept and your process, consolidate your effort throughout the process. Okay, so sorry, let me close that. Okay, there's too much going on here. Okay, I got my bronze reference. I even got fur reference for the character. That's during the design phase, I used that reference to sort of help me with the direction of the fur. I wanted to give it a sort of it's a little eerie, especially because it's in the crotch area, but it's got this sort of natural, flowing pattern, like this natural flowing pattern, which is something, it can help ground the concept. So I got this, I got the faces, I got everything I need. Now all I need to do is just, sketch away. So that's what I did with the cannons as well. Let me put the cannons here. Okay. So the cannons also follow the perspective grid that I have going on here. Where is it here? Okay. It follows this main direction. And I just, a trick, like something, like very simply actually what I did is that sorry, it's not exactly on this one, it's on that one, yes. What I did is that I had this main cannon here. Oh, maybe I start with this one actually, yes. Start with this one. Okay, let me hide that. I had my perspective here. I duplicated it. I grew it, and I just and that's good enough as a as a base, for whatever you want to do, And I put it here again, as a sort of like early base for setting up big basic shapes. That's something, duplicating your shapes and transforming them. That's something I encourage you to do, of course. So that's what I did here, and then of course I just started working out the first the main cannon here, just using the really the properties of that tool here. Like it's just the same design. Really, it's the same design. Only the only difference is that I added these sort of secondary details, like these these little bands here, these little lines that don't correspond to these well, they do sort of correspond with these tools here, but they also correspond, of course, with the bronze reference. Especially these lines here, right? Like these sort of this I thought would be a great reference, like a general reference for the way the cannons are designed. So went through the motion, made sure everything is sort of coherent between one and the next. And then I used like that's something I don't do at the sketch phase just yet, but I did it later. I want to show you in the more rendered version. Is that you see, like this reference here? It has the same patterns, these sort of like swirling, like spirals, like these weird sharp spirals on this Canon reference here, and also on this like other bronze. Like it's a sort of a common denominator throughout like Chinese bronze is this sort of like spirally pattern here. This one here. It appears here. It appears also, here. It appears here as well. You see, it's really pretty much like copy-paste version of it right there. It's a very intriguing little element that I tried to, I tried to add here in my character. Like this guy here, throughout. With a little personal twist, of course. It's not quite, it's not quite the same, but that's pretty much my intention behind it. Another like common element that I try to use is the actual Chinese Bronze Age script for Orion here. And originally it's actually a black and white. Let me see if I have here. Yeah, I started like this. It's a black and white, redesign of this script. It's pretty much, it's pretty faithful to, at least as best as I could, to the original script, and I just used it to sort of consolidate, to give something a sort of a cool visual element that kind of anchors, it kind of grounds your design. Like, it's something I recommend you to do as well, is like is in your characters, in your designs, use a logo, a sort of graphic element that can sum up your character, that kind of it sort of gives it, because we see logos everywhere, right? So use a logo, whenever you can, or something that kind of acts like a logo, and that will help us understand, okay, there's an institution behind that character, or there's a sort of there's a brand maybe, or something like that. There's an entity, there's a sort of culture behind your character. So logos are super important for that. Okay, so yeah, I mean, we're actually at the hour right now, at 1 hour mark. I'll go through a few other motions of this sketching process, but basically that's what it is for this first session. Now to repeat, of course, previous principles that we saw in the earlier sessions. Try to divide your composition into different grounds, right? So here I have these tall grass in the foreground. That's the extreme foreground. It's kind of blurry. They sort of echo themselves, and they repeat themselves in the silhouette of the background. And that's all you need, really. You see, like, just from, let me turn off the perspective, and just from comparing the edge of our foreground shape to the edge of our midground shape, just these grasses, we understand that in between it's all grasses. Like, from this here to here, we understand it's going to be just more grasses. You don't even need to do it yet. Like, this is just something that the eye naturally understands, because what we see first is silhouette as people, and then we see within the silhouette, we see within, like the secondary, tertiary elements. But first, when you design your grounds, your character, your background, your foreground, which is what I did in these earlier stages, is try to just design big silhouettes, big shapes, and later, and refine these shapes, like make these shapes play well with each other. Here is a little more elaborate. I was like, okay, there's going to be big leaves here, smaller leaves over there. The cannons, the 3 cannons, repetition again, right? Repeating the same or similar visual elements help us understand, okay, there's a reason behind it. It helps us take it for granted, take these elements for granted. So repeat, don't forget to repeat these elements to sort of ground them in reality and justify their presence, and also help the viewer understand, okay, by comparing scales we can understand distances, angles and everything. So yeah, that's about it, really. So what I did, of course, first the character. So even without the foreground, where is it? Here. So just, the character, then I fill the silhouette of the character, so that then under it I can do, further elements, like the cannon here. Like, it's not all the way through, if I remove this, if I remove the character and the sketch, you can see it's not complete. It's just there, enough is done just to make sure the shape is there. And then I filled it with the silhouette itself. and went on the same with this this back cannon there. So yeah, sketch, then silhouette, and then layers. Layer your grounds. Mid-ground, foreground, extreme background, and just go through these motions and adjust them with each other. Make sure they interact well with each other. Make sure there's enough graphic interaction. For example, the hair of the character, there's a little bit of echoing, in terms of shape design with a lot of echoing with the grass, right? Like the hair sort of grows in these little curvy points, and that sort of goes with the grass as well. With you see the points of these sort of hooks at the end of the cannon here. There's one here as well. There's one, in design, in intention, there's one there, although it's a little masked. There's one here as well. I try to sort of alternate these and make sure to repeat these shapes to sort of make the overall design a bit more coherent. And I think that's about it. That's about it for this session. In the next session, we'll see how to color, and light this piece, how I went about it. And in the previous, in last month's piece, I devoted one, I think, I did do the two at the same time, I think, lighting and coloring. So I'm going to do the same here. Oh yeah, that's because in the previous month's piece, the PSDs were actually divided into flat colors. There was actually a PSD with flat colors. Here it's not like this. It goes straight to, there are flat colors, of course. If I remove this, you can see it's flat colors. But I just superimposed, the various layers of lighting and, core shadows. They're all named, they're all labeled. So you can, if you want, already go through them and familiarize yourself with the layout. It ends up being a little complicated, right? There's a lot of layers, but it's because they're all, you can all, you can modify them, and they interact very well with each other because they all have a blending mode. There's no normal layer. It's all a hard light, overlay, soft light, etc. So that you can, you can add stuff underneath or modify your colors, and that sort of, that reflects, that affects the layers above, which you cannot do with a normal layer. If you have something in normal, it just stays normal no matter, you don't have an effect no matter what you modify underneath. Anyway, I just wanted to before leaving you, I just wanted to introduce next week's step. So yeah, but okay, as parting words for tonight, I want to repeat again, this idea that you're gonna go through, the emotional ups and downs. That's normal. This stuff never leaves. It happened to me on this piece, and I've been doing it for a few years already. So, and I don't expect this feeling to leave me anytime soon, right? But what you can do is compartmentalize, segment your process into definite steps, so that whenever you stumble, whenever you trip, you can sort of identify, okay, I tripped on the colors, I tripped on the sketch, I tripped on the design, I tripped on the lights, instead of, just tripping on everything at once, which was the case here. I just tripped on everything. The design wasn't done, although I was okay with it, but, so much was wrong at the same time that I was okay, I just froze, and I'm okay, no, let's deconstruct. Let's go through the sketch first. So these steps don't need to be yours. You don't need to go through sketch if you're not a big sketch guy. If you actually rough, plotting, blocking big shapes like this, that's fine. But yeah, compartmentalize, relax, breathe, sleep on it. It always gets better. And talk to me, this is why the Discord is there. You don't need to, it doesn't need to be public. If you just want to share with me your progress, your struggles, that's fine. That's what I'm here for, show me where you're at. Show me where you're hesitating or stuck, and we can work it through. We can work it out. So, all right, take care, guys. See you next week. Share with me your progress, and we'll see. I'll see you soon. All right, take care.